At 6 in the morning, fluorescent lights come on inside a concrete box 7 feet wide and 12 feet long, about 100 miles south of Denver. The man on the poured concrete bed is Joaquin Guzman Loera, El Chapo. He escaped from 2 maximum security prisons in Mexico, once hidden in a laundry cart, once through a mile-long tunnel with a motorcycle mounted on rails. And for the past 7 years, he has woken up every morning inside ADX Florence, the one prison in America built on a single promise: nobody gets out. So what does a day actually look like for the most famous escape artist alive inside a place designed to make escape unthinkable? Here's the strange part. We know, in unusual detail, not because ADX talks. It almost never does. But because El Chapo won't stop talking. Over the past few years, he has described his days in handwritten letters to judges, in pleas to the president of Mexico, and in a federal lawsuit against the prison itself. The most isolated prisoner in America has slowly become one of the most documented. And every detail he reveals answers the same question from a different angle. What happens when the man who beat 2 prisons meets the one prison that was waiting for him? So, 6 a.m. The lights are on, and he opens his eyes on a mattress that is a thin pad over a slab of poured concrete. The desk next to him is concrete. The stool is concrete. Everything in the room is fixed to the floor or part of the floor, because anything that moves can eventually become a tool. The sink and toilet are a single steel unit. If he looks up, there's the window. A slit about 4 inches wide, angled so that all it shows him is sky. No yard, no fence line, no mountains. That's deliberate, and for this particular inmate, it's almost personal. A man who can't see out can't work out where his cell sits inside the complex, and both of El Chapo's escapes ran on exactly that knowledge. The 2015 tunnel that surfaced in his shower at Altiplano was a feat of surveying.
It obviously cost a lot. El Chapo could fund that with pocket change from a weekend.
His people had to know to within a few feet where he stood. Here, after 7 years, he doesn't know that himself. And even if he did, the knowledge would buy him nothing. Beyond his door wait more than 1,000 remotely controlled steel doors, motion detectors, pressure-sensitive ground, and 12 gun towers. Since ADX opened in 1994, no one has ever escaped from it. And his cell isn't even in the main prison. According to federal court filings, he wakes up in a wing of just 4 cells, tucked behind H Unit, the most secure section of the most secure prison in the country. A prison within a prison within a prison. The men who lived there gave it a name: the Suites. For years, only 2 of its 4 cells were occupied. One of them was his. Around breakfast time, the first human contact of the day arrives. Sort of. There's no cafeteria at ADX. There never has been. A guard slides a tray through a slot in the steel door. Standard federal prison food. Planned to a national menu. Screened so nothing on the tray can become a weapon. El Chapo eats it alone, a few feet from his toilet, the way he'll eat every meal today. His verdict on the food, passed out through his lawyers, very poor quality. Maybe the guard says a few words at the slot. Often, no one says anything at all. And depending on the day, those few seconds at the door may be the closest thing to a conversation he gets before nightfall. The man who had once had chefs, ranches, and a private zoo now starts every morning with an argument about a tray.
But the food in penitentiaries is almost unedible, and it mirrors the food in ADX.
And no one in the room to have it with. At some point in the morning comes his time outside. In the main units, that means shackles at the wrists and ankles, and a team of officers walking you to a bare concrete pen. In the suites, they've engineered even the escort away. Court filings describe his cell as fully self-contained. Bed, desk, bathroom, a shower inside the cell itself. And at the back, a door that opens directly into his own private exercise cage. He can be let outdoors without a single door between him and another human ever standing open. The cage sits below ground level, boxed in by 4 walls, wired with its own camera and microphone. His court-appointed attorney, David Lane, summed up the result in one line. The man has not felt direct sunlight on his skin in years. His outdoor hour happens in the shade of concrete. Hold that against where he came from. This is someone who spent decades in the Sierra Madre, who outran 2 governments by moving through mountains he knew by heart. His outdoors is now a sunken box roughly the size of his cell. Then he's back inside, and the hardest part of the day starts. The hours. 22 or 23 of them, alone in the box. Inmates in good standing can earn a small television, mostly religious and educational programming, and a radio tuned to the prison's own stations. There's no job to walk to. In letters obtained by Mexican media, El Chapo complained there's nothing else either. No work assignment, no classes, no programs. Nothing that cuts the day into pieces. So he sits at the concrete desk and he fills the hours the only way left to him. He writes. Handwritten pages in Spanish from a man who grew up poor in the Sinaloa Mountains and barely finished 3rd grade. Which brings up the question hanging over this entire day, who can this man actually talk to? Almost no one. By his own account, he speaks essentially no English. In his lawsuit, he alleges that even the Spanish-speaking guards are instructed not to converse with him. Staff contact happens through slots and intercoms. On paper, he is as alone as the federal government can make a man. Except the designers missed one thing. Doors leak sound. The other occupied cell in the suites belongs to James Jimmy Sabatino.
Who is Jimmy Sabatino?
It's a complicated question.
A Gambino crime family associate from Miami, serving decades for multi-million-dollar jewelry frauds he ran, remarkably, from inside prison using smuggled phones. That's exactly why he ended up under some of the tightest restrictions in the federal system. 2 men, 1 wing, never allowed in the same room. Court filings note that before El Chapo arrived in 2019, Sabatino had the wing entirely to himself. Years, with no voice on the range at all. Then, the world's most famous drug lord moved in next door. And according to court filings, for more than 5 years, they talked anyway, day and night, shouting through their cell doors, every word recorded by the Bureau of Prisons and the FBI. Sabatino says he became El Chapo's translator with the guards, and that, word by shouted word, El Chapo started learning English from him. He says he heard other things through that door too. When El Chapo's mother died in 2023 and he couldn't be there, Sabatino says he saw the drug lord's other side, the grief of a man in a concrete box. In late 2025, Sabatino even wrote to a federal judge asking that the 2 of them be recognized as close friends, and be allowed to take their recreation at the same time, in their separate cages, so they could at least walk and talk together. 2 of the most restricted inmates in America petitioned for the right to exercise in adjacent boxes. That was the shape of El Chapo's social life. 1 Miami con man through a steel door with the government taping every word. Until the prison separated them. According to his attorney, the 2 men can no longer communicate at all. In the afternoon comes mail, the 1 channel he has left, and even that one runs through strangers. Every letter in and out is screened. He's allowed contact with his lawyers and 1 or 2 approved family members, on monitored lines. His Mexican attorney has counted roughly 6 visits in all his years in US custody, and he has spent his afternoons fighting that wall, page by handwritten page, letters to the judge who sentenced him, begging for visits from his wife and twin daughters. Denied. That's the Bureau of Prisons call now, not the courts. An SOS to the president of Mexico describing his confinement as psychological torment and asking to serve his time back home. Nothing moved. Letters claiming the isolation is pushing him to the brink of insanity, a fear Sabatino echoed from the next cell. telling a court he'd watched El Chapo's mind deteriorate. And finally, in 2025, a handwritten federal lawsuit against the prison itself, arguing that this much isolation is unconstitutional. That case is still alive. A year later, a letter arrived at the Brooklyn courthouse asking for fair treatment, written in English, the language he reportedly learned by shouting through a steel door. Now, step back and look at the day so far, because it adds up to something. The window that shows him nothing, the cage with no escort, the guards who won't speak to him, the screened mail, the monitored calls, 6 visits in 7+ years. There's a reason the wall around this one man is built this high. The last time El Chapo sat in a prison before his 2001 escape, he is widely believed to have kept running the Sinaloa cartel from inside it. ADX exists to make sure that never happens again. This is a man who once ran a global operation through encrypted phones and a private communications network built by an IT specialist he personally recruited. All of it was supposed to be reduced to a stamped envelope a stranger reads first. So the real question of this entire day isn't what time dinner comes. It's this: did it work? Did they finally completely cut El Chapo off from the world? According to the Bureau of Prisons itself, no. A confidential BOP report revealed by journalists in 2026 concluded that despite the special lockdown, despite the screened mail, the monitored calls, the 4-cell wing, messages were getting out. According to the report, El Chapo used an intermediary connected to his legal visits to pass coded messages to his adult sons, the men running what remains of his organization. If that's accurate, the choice of channel was surgical. Attorney contact is the one line a prison can't simply read. It's protected, it's private, it's the single door the system is legally required to keep cracked open. Reporting on the document says the messages touched on threats against informants, drug payments, and money laundering. His legal team has denied any knowledge of such a channel, and none of it has been tested in court. Veteran drug agents, for their part, shrugged. Men like El Chapo probe every vulnerability they can find, one former official told reporters. The only surprise would be if he'd stopped trying. And the Bureau treated it as real. When the scheme was uncovered, his communications were reportedly locked down even harder, which recasts the whole day you've just watched. The concrete did what 2 Mexican prisons couldn't. It held his body for 7 years and counting. His words, if the Bureau is right, still found a tunnel. Around 4 or 5 in the afternoon, dinner comes through the same slot in the same door, and the longest stretch of the day begins. A night that runs until morning. Officers walking the range, logging checks on him while he sleeps. He is 69 years old, serving life plus 30 years, and every appeal so far has failed. Which means the day you just watched is not a phase of his sentence. It is the sentence. Somewhere in Mexico, his sons fight over what's left of the cartel. Somewhere in a federal courthouse, his lawsuit inches forward. And at 6 a.m., 100 miles south of Denver, the fluorescent lights come on again. And the man who escaped in a laundry cart, the man who rode a motorcycle through a mile-long tunnel, opens his eyes on the concrete bed, exactly where they left him.